Hey, what's up, everyone? This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. It is Sunday, September 12th, 2021. I'm Norm in London, along with Mike in Buffalo. Hard to believe that we are about a month away from the next NHL season, one that we believe and many are hoping will be like NHL seasons of the past, with all sorts of regularity and normal stuff. 82 games, typical divisions like the Atlantic. So never mind the Scotia North. We're going to be going back to the typical composition of teams based on geographics and based on rivalry. And Mike and I thought we'd talk a little bit about the Atlantic Division re-emerging with the Maple Leafs, not exactly front and center, but certainly a part of it, included in a group with the reigning two-time NHL Stanley Cup overlords, the one and only Tampa Bay Lightning. Mr. Augello, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Norm. We hope, knock on wood, that everything gets back to normal. I know that, like, for example, this afternoon, we'll see a Buffalo Bills stadium in Orchard Park with 70,000 people.
That's a dangerous proposition in and
of itself. It is, but you see, college football. You've got, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of fans in there, and it just seems like everybody's trying to get back to as close to normal as possible. But with the variant and things of that nature, we'll see what happens. I know that Kyle Dubas came out on Bob McCown's podcast this week and said the Leafs are 100% vaccinated, which is a great thing, but that doesn't prevent, as we've seen with breakthrough cases, of the possibility of people still getting positive. So, but getting to the hockey aspect of it, not the realities of COVID, the Atlantic Division is going to be it's going to be really a group that is significantly changed. Even starting from the top, Tampa Bay, their entire third line is gone. They're, Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, who are really a part of that Stanley Cup winning squad. They're all in different places. So is Tyler Johnson. They've had to really revamp. They kept the core group. They've got the star players, but they've really had to basically shuffle out those expensive depth players, and now have brought in Corey Perry and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. And so, they're going to be different. They're probably still going to be very good, and they're probably still going to be a top Stanley Cup contender, but they're not going to be as much of a Leviathan as they were. But that seems to be a trend with the entire division. I don't think the Leafs are as strong as they were last year, but I think that they could be very good. Boston, Krejci is gone. Rask is gone. This is on the heels of Chara leaving the previous year. They bring in Nick Foligno. Taylor Hall is going to be there for a full year. They're going to be changed.
Sure, but Mike, and I'll just throw this in there and you can continue on. Boston has a winning culture. So does Tampa Bay. The Leafs?
Well, the Leafs have a winning regular season culture. It's a question of whether they have a winning playoff culture. So, I know that Dubas basically said, we have to develop what will work in the playoffs during the regular season. The most important thing during the regular season is to get into the playoffs, and they've done that for 5 straight years. But I think that the, sort of defense mechanism of some Leaf fans who have been disenchanted with the team over this summer have been, show me when you make the playoffs and when you win in the playoffs, and then maybe I'll have a good feeling about this squad. But yeah, Boston's different, Tampa Bay's different. I think Florida is improved. They had Sam Reinhart, who is a pretty good top 6 forward who played, years in Buffalo. I think Montreal has taken a dramatic step back. I'm saying it's a realistic observation, but I say it with a sort of sense of glee. But Shea Weber, I think he's probably done for his career. Carey Price might miss time early in the year. They've lost Kotkaniemi. They've lost Deno. They bring in Hoffman. They've made it. I think the trade for Dvorak was good, but I don't think they're as good as they were last year. So realistically, you have 5 teams probably fighting for 4 spots. And if Ottawa comes of age, and they've got a ton of talent. I mean, within 2 years, they're going to be up there with Toronto, with Tampa.
They're going to cause all kinds of problems for the Maple Leafs on those.
They're really
on those wintry. Well, I don't. Do we get winter anymore? On any random Saturday, the Leafs are in wherever the Corel Center, whatever the hell they call that place. They're gonna cause all kinds of problems for the Leafs. You know that.
Yeah. I mean, Stützle and Tkachuk and Shabbat and Batherson and Jake Sanders. I mean, they're really loaded with talent. That's what happens when you finish at the top of the draft for 3 or 4 years in a row. You get a cluster of really good young prospects, and it's a question of what happens when they reach maturity, just like with the Leafs. I mean, Matthews, Marner, Nylander. They're the core group of the team right now. And a couple years ago, they were the top rated organization in terms of prospects. Now they're down in the 20s because all these guys have graduated and they're all in their early 20s now. So, I think realistically it's a 5 to 6 team division. Detroit is still rebuilding. They're starting to make progress. They've got some good young players, but they're a few years away. And Buffalo is an absolute train wreck rebuild. So the Leafs are going to have to finish at least in 3rd, maybe in 4th, and they could finish as high as 2nd. I don't think they're going to challenge Tampa for 1st, although Tampa, it's not really important for Tampa to finish top in the Atlantic Division. It's just get in the playoffs, and then Tampa becomes Tampa.
This is the Convo. I'm Norm, along with Mike. Thanks for being here in the chat. We've got Brian, Wyatt, and Joe. The boys up early to watch the Convo, the second show of the 4th season of this project that you guys all know and love and wait with bated breath to see what we do next. We'll be with you every single Sunday throughout the season to come. We're excited about it. So we're looking at the Leafs, Tampa, Boston, Florida as the 4 you think, at least at this point, will emerge, with Ottawa on the periphery. And Montreal fighting potentially to get in there. Detroit and Buffalo still trying to get things figured out. I like how you were emphatic in proclaiming the Canadians not doing as well this coming season as they had in the past. There are a lot of people who look at the Maple Leafs as a team that will be in that same bracket. Will they, will it be a dramatic drop? That remains to be seen. But it's hard for a lot of Leafs fans, and obviously Leafs dislikers, to put much stock into this team and the idea of this team potentially being better based on the players who Kyle Dubas was able to bring in during this off season. And at this point, it's hard to argue with them.
Well, I mean, it's going to be tough to recover, to find a winger that was as good of a fit as Zach Hyman was with Matthews and Marner. I mean, the Leafs have a number of options. Like I said, I think it's going to end up being Michael Bunting to start the season. I think they'll give him an opportunity. I don't think it'll be a guy like Nick Ritchie, because Nick Ritchie is more of a, I think, second line at best. I think they want him up there, being a physical presence. So I think at first it's going to be Bunting, and then if that doesn't work, then maybe they move Wayne Simmons up to the top 6. But it's not going to be a perfect fit right from the start. The loss of Hyman was a loss. I mean, that's he was a defensive player that covered up for some of the proclivities of Marner and Matthews, although they're getting better defensively as they gain more experience. But Hyman was I think an excellent two-way forward who started to develop offensively. That's going to be the big adjustment. I mean, their defense is pretty much the same. They lose Bogosian in free agency. There may be an adjustment of their having Sandin and Dermott or Sandin and Liljegren, but the top 4 of the D is intact. and they have their core group up front. It's just, who do you put with Tavares and Nylander, or who do you put with Marner and Matthews? And then does that affect your depth forwards? I mean, we don't know what Andrej Kasha or David Kampf or some of the sort of under the radar signings the Leafs made. We don't know how they're going to factor in. We don't know if they're even going to factor in. It could be guys like Adam Brooks or Nick Robertson that make the splash. So, it's all going to be, we'll discover that during the preseason, seeing how Sheldon Keefe sort of implements the new players and what roles he uses them in. Maybe he's going to experiment, and we won't know until the beginning of the regular season.
Yeah. A NASCAR 427, great day for some convo. You are correct there, sir. The core of this group, the big four, the young players coming up, the Spetzes, the Simmons, that composition of players with the guys who've been tacked on that a lot of Leaf fans aren't so excited about, but may in time be. Mm-hmm. That group should be good enough to contend for a playoff spot. And I'm making a statement there. The question I have is, where the hell is this team in terms of its development based on the original projections? I'm thinking of the Blue Jays right now. Like, they're really, really young, and they can hit better than, I'm sorry, Astros can hit and stuff like that, but they hit the most home runs. You saw last night, they hit home runs in the ninth inning, and that they live and die by that ball, but they have that kind of baseball. But, they're still in the development stage. So if it all goes kerplunk, which I know you hope it does before game 162, as much as we'll be pissed off because we're in the middle and thick of this race and we're excited and we think they can go, we have to look at the big picture. How do we look at the big picture in terms of the Maple Leafs? Yeah, they lost in the first round of the playoffs like they typically do to the Canadiens. They had a 3-1 series advantage. They did really well in the regular season. Austin Matthews and Marner were great, and Nylander was fantastic. Big picture, right? Should we take a step back, and for all the lunatics out there who want to jump off bridges or burn all their Leaf stuff or desecrate their Leaf tattoos, what's the big picture perspective on this team? Or should we be kind of saying, no, guys, like, you're coming along here, well, time to do something?
Well, it's funny because I think the Blue Jays are basically where the Leafs were when they played the Capitals the first time they made the playoffs. There's no expectations right now. If they make the playoffs, great. If they beat out the Red Sox or the Yankees, that's fantastic. But the future is bright with the lineup that they have, and maybe their pitching getting better over the next year or two. The Leafs they're past that in the sense that the kids have grown up. Now they're 23, 24, 25 years old. Now the expectation is, okay, you've got your experience and you're better, well-rounded players. Now is the time to win. But the thing is that I don't think the supporting cast is as good as it was in the last couple of years. And I think that's the issue here, because I always use this example, and obviously we've beat it to death that they're paying their top four forwards $40 million. Some other teams are getting to that point because none of these younger players are taking bridge deals for less money. But the problem is that the supporting cast it's on Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, Riley, more than ever, and there's less of a supporting cast to sort of take the weight off of their shoulders, and God forbid if somebody gets hurt, like last year where Tavares got hurt in the playoffs. If there's a lengthy injury to any one of those core four, I don't know whether they have the organizational depth to be able to survive that. I mean, you lose Matthews or Tavares for 6 weeks during the middle of the regular season and you go 500, you're going to fall behind Tampa and Florida and Boston. I mean, I don't know whether they can, now they can play a more responsible defensive game. It'll be a different team than they would be. I think they're still going to try to play more wide open, but their options are not as good because their depth is not as deep as it was. And I think
how do you think Kyle Dubas is viewing this? Has he played his cards, and now it's up to all the dudes he's paid the big money to carry the day and do something extraordinary, or has he played his cards to an extent where he's keeping his fingers crossed that something will transpire between now and the next opportunity for him to make some transactions where he can build off this? Is he thinking of this one season being the end if he's unlucky, or did he truly believe that everything that he's done over the last few months, hey, it's just part of the process, part and parcel of running a hockey team, and that ultimately he will survive as general manager and the Leafs will take steps forward?
I think he's done what he can do based on the realities of the fact that, you got to remember, he signed those contracts in a pre-COVID era where they thought the salary cap was going to go up to 86, 87 million. And if the cap was going up to that, Zach Hyman would be a Leaf. That didn't happen. Now Zach Hyman's in Edmonton. So he made budgetary decisions, cost-effective decisions, signing like Bunting for less than $1 million a year, Nick Ritchie for like I think it was 2.5. He went bargain basement shopping. He did that. You knew that that's where they were going to go. They couldn't afford to re-sign Foligno. They went for it last year and they used the cap calisthenics that they normally do. But now the chickens have come home to roost. And they really, they're limited in terms of the moves that they could make under Dubas. And Dubas, again, he was interviewed by Bob McCown, and he said, well, I believe in the core. I believe in the path that we've taken. I know there's people that don't. I know I don't particularly believe that, you can go with a purely skill lineup. Now, I think that that's why they added Ritchie, because Ritchie is a physical player, and they have a few other physical players. So they're more diversified in that respect. But if this doesn't succeed, Dubas is under no illusions. I think he realizes that if they make the playoffs and they lose in the first round, him and possibly Brendan Shanahan might be out of a job. So I think he's going with what he thinks is going to work. He's sticking with his guns, and we'll only see at the end of the year whether they do have success or not.
Okay, just a couple of comments here. We'll move forward. Cole Tukar. Hey, guys, what's your thoughts on the Morgan Riley situation?
Well, Chris Johnston wrote an excellent article in the Toronto Star this week about the Riley situation, and it stemmed from Dubas's comments in that Bob McCown interview, where they asked him about Riley. There was not really any. I know that they said they were going to talk to him in August, his representatives in August. I asked a question of Dubas during one of the media availabilities, and he said they hadn't talked to him yet. I'm assuming that there's a dialogue there. Based on the contracts that have been signed in the defensive area, the Seth Jones deal for over $9 million, the Cale Makar at $9 million, Darnell Nurse at $9.25 million, which I think is a ridiculous deal. Not to say I love Darnell.
Everybody's overpaid, Mike. Everybody.
Yeah, but
we think everyone's overpaid.
But this is the thing, Norm. Colton Parayko signed an 8-year deal with St. Louis at $6.5 million. So Colton Parayko is around the same age as Morgan Riley. Dubas,
does that have to do with the fact the Blues won a Stanley Cup in the last few years, and that there's a perception that, hey, if I dial back a couple of dollars, I will make that up?
No, I think it's the reality that, and I might be wrong. I think Parayko is 27 or 28, and by giving him the 8-year deal, he's probably not going to play till 36 years old. What he's doing is it's actually a 6 or 7 year deal masqueraded as an 8-year deal, and they tacked on the 8th year to spread the money out. And Morgan Riley, from everything I've heard, wants to stay in Toronto, but he also wants to get paid. And Dubas basically said, well, if we're talking about what Columbus paid Werenski or Chicago paid Seth Jones, then we're not going to be able to do that. But if he's talking about a reasonable deal, and that's the thing, reasonable deals in Toronto never go hand in hand, and that's
look at the other thing too is Dubas has already overpaid his top guys. All of them really are overpaid, with the exception of William Nylander recently.
I don't think Matthews is overpaid. Matthews is one of the 2 or 3 best forwards in the NHL. I mean, he didn't score in the playoffs last year, but he scored. He led the league in goals, and he's making 11.
I understand that, Mike, but you know what'll happen? You know what'll happen if that guy goes on any kind of slump?
Yeah.
Any kind of slump. People will say he's overpaid. Anytime you're spending money to that extent, I mean, there will be a faction of people who think you've spent too much and that you could have rediverted that money in other ways and brought in different kinds of players. Those guys are paid that kind of money, but for a reason. But if they're not producing at that same level all of the time, and they don't have a positive spotlight shining on them, through social media, they will be castigated and they will be criticized for making too much. And then the buck stops with the general manager. So he doesn't want to get back into another situation where he's overpaying somebody who he doesn't believe will be able to produce commensurate with what's being paid to them throughout the tenure of the contract. And with Morgan Riley, where he is in his career, he's destined for a drop off. The upside will certainly start going the other way at some point, if not here soon. In the future, the thing is, if you don't sign a stalwart like Morgan Riley, who's been with you and understands the situation, and who's who could ultimately be a guy who will hoist the Stanley Cup over his head for this team in the seasons ahead, who do you bring in? And if you don't sign these guys, and if you're not able to keep them, does the perception not start to turn into, this team goes on a 3, 4, 5-year run, and now it's back to a bit of a rebuild?
Well, and see, I know that the theory out there is, well, they're going to see whether Rasmus Sandin can grow into a top 4 defenseman, and if he
when is that?
Well, I think
good, but I'm sorry, he's
right,
not a generational player. When is that going to take place?
Right,
when
and
Austin Matthews is playing hockey in Arizona. Come on, man.
No. I mean, but that's the calculation here. Like, for if it's me, honestly, Morgan Riley is 27 years old. He's one of the better defensemen in the NHL. He's not one of the best. I'd say he's not one of the top 10, but he's in the top 20 to 25. Yeah. He's going to make the Canadian Olympic team if they go to Beijing.
And isn't that what you want? Isn't that good enough? Does everybody have to? You have to Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky. You're not going to have the best of the best of the best, especially a team like the Maple Leafs.
Well, it's a question. It's a question of how much you have to pay a guy who's in the top 20, 25. If you're paying him like a top 10, then they can't afford it. Now, in my estimation, before I would try to get Riley agreed to a contract before the season starts. He'd be on his current deal for this year, and then next year, if the bill comes due, then you probably, and you can't, if it's an $8 million contract, then maybe you have to trade Nylander finally.
If the bill comes due.
Well, I mean,
there's somebody knocking at your door, Mike.
Yeah.
Sheriff.
But the thing is that the cap is going to stay static for the next 2 or 3 years.
Man,
$1 million.
Mike, it's the 4 Leafs. It's Nylander, Tavares, Marner, and Matthews, and it's those guys and whoever else you can put into the mix. There's all the money's invested in these 4 dudes. Right, and that's what it is. That's why Zach Hyman is on another team, and that's why we're nickel and diming on a guy like Morgan Riley, who should get paid pretty well. He's done very well. He's not the best defenseman in the league, but he's in that second tier. And when those guys come around, you pay them because you need them. They're not a dime a dozen. But you can't right now, and you're concerned about it because the Big Four have all the money. So this is the Big Four or bust, and I don't know. Most people don't think this thing is going to be a success in the end, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, and there's reason for skepticism because there hasn't been success already. And, does that mean that, well, if they do sign Morgan Riley, that's somebody like, Jake Muzzin or Justin Hall or TJ Brody gets traded. I don't know. It's all a question. I think, the development of Rasmus Sandin as a defenseman this year is going to be a key piece of what the future is going forward, because if I believe that Rasmus Sandin will end up probably being the point man on their power play, that not to take the responsibility away from Morgan Riley because they want to keep his price down, but I think Sandin's got a better shot at the.
Sure, we know that.
And I do think that they want to divvy up the minutes more. So if Sandin is a bottom pairing guy, he'll get the power play time, and it'll give Riley more time to be a 5-on-5 guy. So but his success will, and the team's success will be based on whether Sandin can play well 5-on-5. And he's, I've seen him play with the Marlies. I've seen him play with Sweden at the World Juniors. He is an excellent prospect. Whether that translates to him being an excellent NHLer, we're only going to find that out in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, dialing Morgan Riley back statistically helps the Leafs case because he's not playing as much. He's not doing as much. Why should we pay you as much? But that whole concept will end up futile when it comes to the Leafs and their idea of success, because you'll lose him. Sandin will step in. He'll be as good as he can be, but you're not going to win a Stanley Cup with one good defenseman. You need a collective, right? You need that veteran presence. You need a guy who you can trust, and then you have the emerging defenseman coming through, and then you have the not spare parts, but you have the complementary pieces. That's all the teams that win have that composition, have that mosaic, and the Leafs are trying, but they have so much money tied up in the Big Four, and maybe Kyle Dubas is still trying, and I wouldn't say maybe, he probably is still hoping to devise a plan where he can relinquish himself of one of these top four players, obviously a Marner or possibly a Nylander, even a Tavares, in order to kind of free up some money and restructure the team a little bit with a group of stars, but not as many who are paid so much. My phone's going to die, so we've got to do about 3-4 minutes left of the podcast. Kyle Stoddard in Community, losing his mind. You can go to the community portion of the YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Leafs Convo. Go to Community. Kyle's talking about how he doesn't want to watch this team anymore. He still hates this team. He's so broken. He's been demanding a trade for Marner. Now he's confused. Mike, how do we exercise? I don't know if we'll ever be able to exercise the disappointment of playoffs gone by, and the historical futility of this organization from the current fan base. And I'll let you finish with this, but I mean, what is it going to take from game one to game how many ever for the Leafs to get the fan base back on board and allow them to forget about what happened with Montreal and get focused on what this team's capable of in the next season to come? Last word to you.
It won't happen in games 1 through 82. It'll happen in game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Wow. It's going to be a long grind, man.
Because the reality here is, after 5 years, and the first couple years we realize, okay, this is a young team, that they're going to have their growing pains, things of that nature. But last year especially, and maybe the year that they lost to Columbus, the expectation was, okay, this team is going to make a deep run, and they didn't. And that's why I think a lot of fans are disenchanted. And until they prove they can win when it counts, there will be doubting Thomases. And that's understandable. I mean, it's like, it's fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. It's like that you until you see evidence that this team can actually win in the postseason when it counts. And we're not even talking about winning the Stanley Cup. We're talking about winning a round. They haven't won a round since 2004. So I don't think the Leaf fans are being unrealistic. Oh, we must win the Cup. No, it's, can we win a round? Can we have some success when it counts? And that, I think that only then will the fans say, okay, now I can believe again. Because right now, somebody scores 4 goals, they win 10 games in a row during the regular season. Zippity doo-dah. Show that to me in April and May when it counts.
Doubting Thomas sounds like a deadline edition.
Mm-hmm.
It does. Doubting Thomas is the third pairing.
Doubting Steve Thomas.
Doubting Steve Thomas. Jeff Komaransky. It'll take a luxury tax to save the Leafs from themselves.
Well, that's not happening in the next 5 years because of the CBA. So, you can look at it optimistically. The $1.2 million that they're paying Phil Kessel, that drops off after next year. And they have a few unrestricted free agents, so they'll have a little flexibility. Mm-hmm. But is that enough to get Morgan Rielly signed on a 5 or 6 or 7 year deal? I think it's going to be 8. Have to be 8 years at greater than $7 million, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, he's not that good of a defenseman." Yeah, try to replace him if he leaves.
Yeah. No, and that's true. But we know based on recent history that Kyle Dubas is going forward be a little gun shy on spending big money over long term on anyone. Hey, are the Leafs still chipping in on the Bobby Bonilla contract?
Not that I know of.
Look it up, OG's Converts. Mike, thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Norm.